So this interview came to be because at my firm at Parker Financial, we walk life with people who are getting ready to retire, and we manage investments for our clients. We custody at Fidelity Investments, but we use a lot of Vanguard funds for our clients' investment portfolios. We also utilize the research from CRSP, CRSP. CRSP stands for Centers for Research in Security Prices, which is an affiliate of the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. Vanguard has a great reputation for helping keep our clients' fees low, and CRSP has a great reputation when it comes to research regarding asset allocation. We utilize CRSP research to align our strategies with some of the top academic research. Chicago Booth is the second oldest business school in the world and has 9 Nobel Prize winners on its faculty. CRSP helps to bridge the gap between theory and practice. The CRSP research incorporates the most modern and forward-thinking approaches, and Vanguard, as a mutual company, has low-cost ETFs to help serve our clients. So let me tell you a little bit about my guest. Todd Schlanger Cfa is a senior investment strategist in Vanguard's investment strategy group, where his responsibilities include research on portfolio construction and asset allocation, model portfolio development, and tailored portfolio solutions. Mr. Schlanger joined Vanguard in 2005 and has been a member of the investment strategy group for over 10 years, with most of that time on international assignments to Vanguard's London, UK, and Toronto, Canada offices, where he was the senior representative for the group in the region. Prior to joining ISG, the investment strategy group, he was a member of the institutional advisory team. He earned a BS in business administration from the University of Scranton and is a CFA charter holder. Without any further ado, let me bring on my guest, Todd Schlanger with Vanguard. Todd, welcome to Sound Retirement Radio.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you for being a guest. I've been looking forward to this interview for a long time. You know, I know Vanguard is huge in the investing space, but we should probably start from square one, and maybe you could just fill us in, let our listeners know, who is Vanguard?
Sure. So Vanguard's one of the world's largest asset management companies. We're headquartered in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, right outside Philadelphia, founded in 1976. We manage about $7 trillion in assets around the world. I think we're probably best known as a provider of index funds in ETFs, but we're actually also one of the world's largest active managers, if you can believe it. We're in the top 3, around $2 trillion in active assets. I would say our core kind of belief is that lower cost products will outperform higher cost products, and we can get into that, in the conversation. But Vanguard's actually organized as a mutual, meaning if you invest in a Vanguard fund or ETF, you're actually a part owner of the company. And the way that we compensate our owners is by passing on the economies of scale of our business back to them in the form of lower fees. So, we think index funds, active funds, they can all make sense, but our ownership structure really allows us to provide it all for a low cost.
Yeah, we love that. I quote Jack Bogle quite a bit, saying that the costs matter hypothesis. But so what specifically is your role then with Vanguard?
So I work in what's called the investment strategy group, and you can think of that as about 70 analysts around the world. Probably, let's say 2/3 of them in the U.S., but then we also have offices in Europe and Asia. And our role is primarily to answer the question, what does Vanguard think about, XYZ investment topic? So my particular role, I work on what's called the asset allocation team. So essentially our role is to figure out, what different types of investment strategies work for investors, achieving different objectives. We also have teams that look at our market and economic outlook, for example, groups that focus on retirement planning, but we're all essentially the retirement research group at Vanguard.
Awesome. Well, I want to dig into all those topics: asset allocation, retirement planning, economics, economic outlook. Before we get into some of the finer details here, why Vanguard? Why did you choose to have a career with Vanguard?
Yeah, it's interesting. It was no particular thing. It was kind of like everything came together at once. I knew I wanted to be in investing, the investment management business when I was in university. I remember talking to my father and asking him, what different firms he would recommend. He mentioned Vanguard. He didn't have a lot of specifics, but he mentioned for me that, there was something unique about the company and the products tended to perform really well. I talked to some professors at my university. They could give me a little bit more details about, Vanguard being known as an index provider, the fact that it was a mutual. And then I reached out to some alumni as well. I would say the core for me, why I joined Vanguard was really, the ownership structure made sense in the sense that you felt like you were, doing good for investors by lowering fees. At the same time, it was also a firm that was growing because if your investors do well, they invest more with you, and it was growing business. It was a growing business. So I really saw that the opportunity to grow with the company. Vanguard's, tends to have a longer term career pathing than some other firms. So I found all that attractive, and about 15 years later, I'm still here.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to have you on as a guest today. It's interesting that you said your dad was one of the first, as you were kind of listing off the research that you were doing and who you were going to work with. Your dad played a part in that. And why I find that interesting is my dad introduced me to my mentor in this field. And when I had Christine Benz on the program from Morningstar, she also mentioned that her dad played a big role in her going to work with Morningstar. So just noticing this with dads having a role in the direction that their kids go, but it's kind of interesting. So let's start talking about financial planning as it relates to retirement. Todd, you may not know this, but most of the people that listen to Sound Retirement Radio are probably within a couple of years of retirement or recently retired. And one of the things that we're always talking about is asset allocation. So would you take a minute and maybe share your thoughts on why asset allocation is important?
Yeah, so at the highest level, if you define asset allocation as just, the percent of your portfolios in equities, the percent of your portfolios in bonds, research has shown there was really a seminal study back in the 80s that showed about somewhere between 85 and 90% of the overall return pattern of your portfolio can be explained by just that, how much of the portfolio is invested in equities. So it's a powerful driver in terms of what it does for investors, but it's also a tool that's really in their control. I mean, if you think about the financial markets and even the past year, the volatility we've had, asset allocation is really a tool investors can use to manage how much to the equity market. The second thing I would say, and I think we're going to get a little bit into Vanguard model portfolios, is if you think about kind of the baseline asset allocation as just the total U.S. market, for example, the total bond market, the total international markets, due to the low cost nature of those types of strategies, because you can usually buy them at a low cost, and also they tend to have low turnover. Those are actually the two most powerful drivers in predictability, in terms of predictability of your future returns. Just the broad asset allocation tends to be really competitive relative to those higher cost, higher turnover strategies. As I said, we're also a believer in active, but we would always kind of start investors with just like a total portfolio passive mix. And then from there, figure out if there's something more they're trying to achieve. And then you could always tailor a portfolio from there.
Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about passive and active here in a minute. But so, what are your thoughts? Because right now we've got things like Robinhood that is encouraging a lot of day trading. We've got a lot of these newsletters that are growing in popularity that encourage people to buy individual stocks. So, as you think about the advantages and disadvantages of asset allocation versus individual stock picking, would you speak to that for me?
Yeah, so I mean, in the individual stock picking, you know, when you bring up what's happened with the, some of the speculation in the last few months with the GameStop and et cetera, we really wouldn't consider that investing. We would consider that more speculation, which is very difficult to get right.